To our October Reading Club, student engagement across course teaching modalities. So wonderful to have you. We just had a little technical glitch there, so I'm going to speed through these first couple of slides pretty quickly. If you know, then you've already probably heard me say this. Reading Club etiquette, we'd like to keep our microphone muted until somebody is ready to talk. You are always welcome to put those comments in the chat. We are recording this session, and I should absolutely be the person recording this time. And the slides and this recording will be available in the PD2Go newsletter. So if you are watching the recording, please, thank you so much, and definitely check out the slides and the resources there. Okay, as I was saying, the Light Center has had this offering pretty much all year long so far. We've made this part of our 2024 professional development initiatives. We've really enjoyed having these conversations, looking at different topics. And with that in mind, of course, I do want everybody to complete the survey. If my screen will stop jumping around. I'm going to put that into the chat right now. So, for those of you who do not know, Light Center now is 100% professional development. It's all we're doing at the Light Center to bring programming to you. So please do complete this Reading Club survey so that we know, how do you feel about Reading Club? How do you feel about our articles and our apps this year? This is our last Reading Club of 2024. So please do give us your thoughts so we know how useful this offering is to you. Who's here today? Let's see, you can unmute yourself, or for the sake of time, please pop it in the chat. We always like to get to know folks a little bit here. Mute yourself or type in the chat your name, your college, and then I just changed up the question a little bit this month. What do you enjoy about teaching at Westcliff University? Or if you're new, what are you looking forward to about teaching at Westcliff University? So please share some thoughts in the chat or unmute. If you want your voice to be heard, I do not need to be the only person talking at all.
All right. I'm Dr. Johnson. Dave, I'm in the College of Business. What I enjoy teaching at Westcliff is the fact that we get the United Nations in every class. I truly enjoy that.
Love it. We're going to be talking about that a little bit today too. Diversity, definitely incredibly important to our campus.
This is Al-Barodi. Been with the Westcliff about 5 years, and I'm in the College of Technology. I love everything. I love the collaboration with the professional team here, and I also love the diversity of the class. I learn from the class as much as they learn from me, but I don't admit that.
Thank you, Professor Brody.
I guess I'll go. Please, Dr. Mary Broding. I am going to put on different hat today. I'm with the College of Education. I'm going to be a dissertation chair and committee member, depending on what the need is when we get our first group of doctoral students in the EDD program moving into their dissertation phase. I think that's going to happen in the spring or the summer. And I'm just excited to be able to work with students in that capacity and see what kind of research they come up with.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dr. Brody. Dr. Mary says, new faculty member, you're doing NFO right now, right? Fantastic to have you here. Always good to see new faces in our events. Dr. Papadopoulos said, Chester Copperfield from Goonies. Okay, you have to unmute because I'm just going to butcher your whole chat comment here.
Well, I love serving students to get their dissertations doable, and be valuable contributions to the body of knowledge. They're not saving the world. They're just going to do a small piece of research and make it valuable. And Chester Copperfield is who the Goonies found when they went down into the cave in the movie, and he was the dead scientist.
It's his map.
This is map. Thank you. I appreciate that because I know I've seen Goonies at least 20, 25 times, but it's been some years. And so I was like, oh, I should know this. I should know this reference. That's fantastic. Thank you. Anybody else want to share who you are, what you do, why you're here? Hello. This is why we do things where we require cameras on you guys. Don't change that. Don't change that dynamic. Just hop into the chat. Oh, yes, Dr. Bahiri, please unmute yourself.
Hello.
Yes, hi.
Hi, it is me, Noha Beheri. I am a new faculty member at the Faculty of Computer and Technology. And I came to teach in Westcliff University. I am very interested to teach in multidiversity student and take the experience of teaching in American University. Actually, this is my first time I'll be teaching in an American University. I have been teaching in the Taipei University and Khartoum University, and I was teaching in ICTB in Trieste. But this is my first time to be in USA as a teaching member. So I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Fantastic. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, I put something in the chat for those of you who are being flies on the wall. I don't actually mind, but it's so much better when people join in. And that's a little bit of what our article is about, right? So thoughts on the article. And as I normally do, let me pop that in there right now so that you have access to that. And just a follow-up question, what kinds of factors contribute to student engagement in the article? If you had a chance to read it or you've read it recently, we did share it with you almost 2 months ago. Or what factors contribute to student engagement in your experience? And we can talk about their specific findings or just your experiences, but definitely I think the article, I think it's worth giving a scan.
It was difficult because the sampling, as typical when it comes to studies like this, the sample itself was, you're talking about a small liberal college, you're talking about people who are paying a lot of money to go to a university like this. Their likelihood of engagement is going to be different than, say, if you had done this at a junior college, or like at Westcliff, where we have a lot. Let's face it, we have in the grad program, the vast majority wouldn't be there unless they had to. So the engagement element's different. We have a bigger range of, some people want to do their best, others kind of like play the game. I mean, as far as that goes. So it's hard to transpose that because of the sample.
Right.
It just wasn't it was a very unique sample. It's not a bad thing, but you couldn't really do a lot of takeaways. They were mostly the greatest majority of them, or not majority, the greatest chunk of it were freshmen who were living in the dorms. So basically you're dealing with post-high school students who are still, I mean, all of us are freshman year, there's just a million things going on in our brains. And even figure out how to engage at college is tenuous. So, and I noticed the response rates were limited and so forth. So I don't know what else to add to that.
No, I think that background information is really important context as we go into talking. So, sorry, go ahead, Professor Parudi.
I would say, like, if you don't say it, they will not hear it. So you have to keep demanding it. You have to keep asking for it. Hey, I need your attention. I need your attention, and keep asking it for it, and try to, quiz them on that. Okay, what did I say last, or what? Are you with us? What do you think about what we're talking about? Oh, I'm sorry, I was not. Okay, this is like a note for you. You have to. I think keeping asking for the attention worked for me.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know what I'd like to ask my fellows here is that, isn't it? I find it odd that in my experience, like I'll teach the same course on Monday and Thursday. And I'll have Monday's class is engaging and everybody's contributing. It's like that particular cohort is strong. And Thursday, it's an act of God to get anybody to say anything, to speak anything. And I'm just picking those 2 days, not necessarily Monday and Thursday, but how different the classes are depending on the cohort.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if others have experienced that.
Hey, Dr. Johnson, are you sure it's not you, is the student?
I like to think I'm no different on Monday than I am Thursday, and especially teaching the same material.
Just
And
kidding.
even term to term, like you'll have one term that they're not as engaged, and the next one they're on fire, and and it's just interesting.
Term to term, definitely. Like when I have taught even recently, and I mostly when I do teach now, it's asynchronous and it's online, so that's a different animal altogether. But those first part of fall incoming students that, and it seems like whether they're new to campus or not, even if they just had the summer break, they're bumping around. But I don't know if I've ever paid attention to days of the week. I think that's interesting.
Well, just the fact they were different, that I just use that from the standpoint of how different classes can be.
Right.
Just
right.
As far as like you have one class that's very engaged, and the same class just at another time is seemingly lethargic.
I noticed that if there is one student that is actively engaging, it is sort of contagious, like it does stimulate other students. But if the whole group is inert, passive, usually it may not have this trigger that will trigger everybody to interact. So it could be the group mix, it could be your luck for that specific class.
Well, I mean, like I had in another university, I remember I had one class of 12 students, and 11 of them finished went on. It was such a good class that 11 of them finished their dissertations in a rather quick time. And I've had another one where like nobody ended up finishing their dissertation. It was that much of a difference in engagement from the start. And like Dr. Alberti said, it kind of sometimes it just takes a student or two to be that catalyst of engagement, and it had irrespective of who I am, because again, you're not going to talk, I'll pick you, but it's better when it's more organic, that they're listening to each other, and I can kind of be more of a facilitator.
Sometimes I go ask a question and no answer, repeat the question and no answer, and say, you know what, guys, silence doesn't bother me. I'll wait. Wait, give like 30 seconds till somebody say something, right?
Did you have a professor that did that to you when you were in college?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, I had a couple that were known for it. And literally by like week 3, we were like, all right, everybody hands up, because we're just gonna, it made so many of us uncomfortable. But like, I don't know. I think even now, like we're not used to sitting in like awkward silence. And I remember a colleague saying, like, I don't do that because I don't feel like silence is awkward. And I was like, your students do. Trust me. Like, students don't like it. Or you say, Dr. Johnson?
I mean, even when I was at UC Davis, I had the one time I was busy, I didn't do the reading. And the professor called on me, and I didn't have the answers. No, I didn't do the reading. And he drilled me the whole class to be an example for everybody else. And, in truth, I never let that happen again. Can you imagine if they did that today? They would be calling the dean,
awful.
calling the vice president, they'd be calling everybody else. Yeah, but again, how many students do the reading before class?
And the technique will vary between, like, if it's online class or in person. In person, I walk among like the chairs. I go like close, so whatever they're doing, they like invading their personal space, and whatever they're doing, they have to pay attention. They put their hand down, like if they are holding the phone, they will put it back and they will go. So like like I'm a big guy, I'm 6'3", and I think Dr. Johnson is also the same. So when you walk there, they cannot ignore your presence. They like you have to like they just put it there. But online, you have to call names like and say, "Hey, Mr. So and so, what did I say?" Or like, what is your comment about my statement? So it's a little bit different technique, but it's like pulling teeth sometimes. It's just like you have to demand the attention.
Interesting. That's true. I think that like the Zoom technique, Dr. Bahiri, give me a second. The Zoom technique of unmuting somebody so they get that pop-up that says, you've been asked to unmute. Like I've done that one a couple of times in live sessions, and I'll just let them know at the beginning of the session. Dr. Bahiri, what were you going to say? Oh, go ahead and unmute.
Okay. I was just saying if we give, we say to the student that we will give extra mark for contribution in the class. Will that make sense? I mean, will that make them make more contribute in the discussion or something by, give them sort of intensity, intensive for, discuss or contribute in the discussion?
So we don't, I think as a
Does
general practice, we don't do extra credit at Westcliff. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, within your respective colleges, there is some wiggle room in terms of participation credit. So it still kind of becomes this, from my understanding, this kind of negative, more of a punishment because they're going to lose points as opposed to like an incentive. But yeah, if anybody else has some thoughts on Dr. Mahiri's question, that's a really good question. Extra credit for participation. I see you. Do you want to earn some extra credit? Go ahead. Dr. Papadopoulos, you had your hand up? Okay,
Yeah, so we basically give them we have to grade them at Westcliff for participation for that week at, that's if I remember the system correctly, because I got like 3 universities. So they just give them full for participation and write the summary. But then as far as like earning extra credit, I sometimes, if they have to like write something and then they rewrite it, I'm willing to give them the points, like make an exception. But if it's a huge class, like 48 students and, but that's not the case at Westcliff.
right.
It's just a matter of, we have to follow the syllabus and then grade using the rubric and then make it work that way.
Sometimes I deduct from from participation. I go, let's say 50%, and say like if you prepare the BCS, I will give you back the 50. Some of them they don't care, but if they care and they say, oh, okay, I'll pay. Especially they say, hey, what do you think about what we're talking about? What are we talking about? I wasn't. I'm sorry, sir. Can you repeat the question? I go and deduct 50%, and like in the note I say like not paying attention on the class, and I say like if you want to compensate for that, it's just like do BCS again. It doesn't happen again. Like I assure you, like the whole class will not do it again. But do I have the energy to have this fight in every class? Some classes, no. You know what? They just like I don't know. Especially those people who keep playing the game of turning off the cam. Hey, turn on your cam, and like 5 minutes later they turn off the cam. Those I usually go ahead and deduct 50% like immediately.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely in those online classes. I was working with a faculty member at another institution, and she was told by her department that she could boot anybody out of the room that didn't have their camera on. Like they were not playing around with it. Like, and they had, obviously from COVID, there was the whole, oh, but students don't want to share their location and their images and da 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 da. And essentially, like her department chair was like, students, just about every student, has social media, has all these places where they're posting their pictures. Like if a student has a genuine concern, we can make an accommodation, but no students really did. And then they're all given Zoom backgrounds, right? And so there was no like being worried about your space or sharing your space or anything. Essentially, like, you know, oh, Dr. Johnson, do you want to say, like, can that be done? Like, would College of Business support that? Would, yeah.
Yeah, I've done that. And it's usually, you know, you tell them, I need you to turn your camera on. You give them a couple of warning shots. So look, if you're not going to put your camera on, I'm just going to remove you from the class.
Because
So
essentially
they
you
had
can assume
plenty
that the
of
person's not
warnings
there.
here.
And
Yeah.
I mean, exactly. We have no idea.
I did it last class. I did it last class. She claimed that her camera is not working. I said, okay, I accept that. But every time I ask you a question, you immediately respond.
There you
So
go.
I asked her, are you there? Are you there? She didn't respond. I gave her like, okay, within 5 minutes, if you did not respond, I'm kicking you out of the class. She did not. I kicked her out of the class and I asked her to do VCS.
There you go. And that's the thing. They also have support. Those of you who are new faculty and you're like, oh, I haven't got my first class yet. We all have to think about this. Faculty, students do have the VCS recordings, and most cases, most modalities that I know of, am I getting a head shake? Is anybody teaching a class where they don't have, they should have VCS. If they don't have VCS, then definitely reach out to me and let me know, because I want to know which colleges don't do that.
Is it, they're only allowed 2 absences technically, officially, right? If I'm correct, I don't know if anybody knows. I mean, they can't always do VCS every week.
They can't always do VCS, correct. But there are some modalities where they're given like a little bit more permission to it. This is why I needed James Jones here, because he was going to do this talk. James. But yeah, so I'm not sure. It depends on the course modality too, though. So, but yeah, no, definitely check with your course, your college.
If there's an online portion, it's recorded. The only time it's not is if everybody is physically in the class. So there wouldn't be a VCS anyway, because we're supposed to be there in the class.
That's my understanding. And that's actually a really good segue into, like, keep in mind our different teaching modalities. So those of you who are in the room as new faculty, or maybe this is a good refresher, the list that James gave me is kind of insane, but apparently the top 5 are the something called combined, which may or may not have an ASA, remote faculty, which does have an ASA. Oh, Dr. Constance here. Hello. The question, Jody, when did you come in the room? Hello, welcome. We were talking about student participation, and one of our new faculty who's joining us today had a question about can I offer extra credit for participation, and we're talking about how it actually kind of works opposite that. You more have to take points away in terms of participation, and they were talking about what happens when, in specifically the modality of having an online space, are faculty allowed to kick students out who have their camera off, who are unresponsive? So that's what that was kind of the direction we're heading. Correct. Good. Let me know if you hear me say anything wrong. So yeah, so we have all of our different, go ahead.
I would just say that, you don't give extra credit for participation. Students earn 1 to 2% session during each week during the session to participate in class. And so there is a rubric that you have to score the students against for their participation in class. So they can't get extra credit for being participatory. They have to actually, that's part of their responsibility. And then what was the second part of the question, Jamie?
So specifically for like Zoom classes, like if the student is unresponsive, if they're not there, you've called on them, their camera's off, they're muted, can you boot them out of the class?
So, I suppose you could, say, Joanie, I've called your name 3 times. I've tried to reach out to you in chat. You are not responsive. I am removing you from the class. And I guess you could go into Zoom and do that. At this point, I would just have that on record that I called your name 3 times. I went to you in the chat. If they're just sitting there not listening, I probably wouldn't kick them out of class. I just know they're not there. And then in the participation of the grade, I would give them a 0. And in the comment section, I would say, you'll notice on the video, I called your name 3 times. I put it in chat. You were non-responsive, you get a 0, and there is no VCSA makeup. And I would be very clear there. That's how I would probably do it. But could you kick them out? I guess you could. I've had that thing happen as recently as last week in week 8 with a student who joined, and I documented it in that way, and they're not getting, that's how I did it, but I did not kick them out.
But
I mean, there's other faculty here that may do it in another way and have other opinions, but I mean, I've told students you can't drive in class. I'm so sorry. Please log out and log back in when you're not driving. I have asked students to leave, but I document all of that. It's and if it wasn't recorded, like let's say there was some reason that you were on campus and there was a student in class that was extremely rude or something, and you said, you know what, I think it's probably best that you join us in class next week when you feel better, or when you're not as you're not having so many problems. I would still document that in GAP, and I would definitely bring it to the attention of the PC.
The challenge when you kick the student out that they cannot come back on the same session.
Right.
I want them, like, I want to kick them out, but maybe like they will find out that, I found out that they are not paying attention and they come back. I will welcome them to come back, but Zoom doesn't allow that, which is, I'm not sure it's bad, but I can argue both ways.
That's an important factor as well. The
Well,
other question,
they do
Dr.
that
Constant.
because,
oh, go ahead.
yeah, they do that because if somebody's really being disruptive, you don't want them to keep coming back. So
Sure.
that's why
Sure.
Zoom does that.
Yeah,
but they can come back on a different device.
Oh, there's that part. Yeah. Dr. Constant, the other question was, if somebody were to do that, if a faculty member were to remove a student from class and tell them, okay, go watch the VCSs, if they only have 2 VCS viewings per session, then how would that impact their, like, is it considered an absence? Is it considered, or is it not considered an absence? So I think, is that kind of up to the faculty member, how they determine that, as long as they say it ahead of time?
I would, if I'm kicking a student out, I would never tell them to go watch the VCSA.
Okay.
Right? Like personally, if I'm asking you to leave, then you're that disruptive, and I would not give them an opportunity to make the class up. I would mark them absent, or I would mark them late. And then I would document in my participation exactly what I did, and I would score them appropriately. I personally would not give an option to watch a VCSA. And the VCSA policy is you're allowed 2 absences over 8 weeks, at which time you can do a VCSA or an alternative assignment. After 2 absences, they're marked absent with no options unless the program chair has given permission. So if the program chair or dean
very helpful.
given permission, they will notify you and say, student so-and-so has, a situation where I have provided them the opportunity to make up these 2 classes. They will be watching your VCSA or provide them an alternative assignment. But personally, if I kick them out, I would not give them that option. Like, why would I, if they're that bad and they're in class, why would I want them? I would, like those, in my opinion, it's their consequence of their behavior.
I hear you.
So I have a student in my class which attends only 1 session, but he is very consistent in submitting on time, VCS every week. So he has 7 or 6 VCS already. I marked him as a V, and up to the registrar to accept that or not, right?
So we changed that policy. So professors no longer have that autonomy to do that. Students may not take the class asynchronously. So it doesn't matter if they do it faithfully every single week and they're really good about it. They're allowed 2. After 2, if you're marking them V and allowing them to turn that in, you must have approval from university administration.
How are we supposed to keep track of that?
Well, so Dr. Johnson, you would have, is that Dr. Johnson?
Yes.
Yeah.
That was who asked
So
that.
Dr. Johnson, you would have that in your attendance, that they were
I
marked
know, but I
absent
mean,
twice.
let's say it happens week 1, week 6, and then week 13. I'm supposed to remember week 13 they already had 2. You know, I'm supposed to go through every week. I'm supposed to go through it to check all that. I'm not
So
gonna
I would
remember
say
that. I
that
can
it's a,
barely remember what I ate for breakfast.
I would say that is a professor responsibility. But I
To
mean,
check the
and it's
attendance every week,
specifically,
every class.
yeah, and it's specifically designed, that policy was enacted specifically, and I think we've gotten off track, Joni, so, but.
It's okay. I want everybody's questions to be answered. So yeah.
But that policy was enacted specifically because there are students who are just taking the classes asynchronously. They're just doing 6, 7, 8 weeks of classes online on their own without actually attending. And so that policy was enacted in fall 1 to stop that practice.
Gotcha.
But for Dr. Johnson's question, am I supposed to monitor it? Dr. Johnson, you're right. If it would happen in week 1 and it happened in week 6, and all of a sudden it happens again in week 13 and you missed it, I mean, I don't think that is a big deal. I think the big deal
Yeah.
is the earlier example where you have the student who's just like, I've marked him verified for 6 weeks. That's a problem.
Right.
So if I
Yeah.
submitted
And
the C
again,
grade, the registrar will come back to me and say, okay, this is not valid based on the recent policy and I have to change things.
So I don't know that the registrar will actually catch you. I don't know that they're going to be able to monitor it that closely. They might not catch it till after the class is over, but I will tell you the policy is, no matter how great the student is, without administration approval, they cannot miss more than 2 classes and do a VCSA. And the policy
that's
was
helpful.
made, the policy was made to stop students from not attending, because it was a large amount of students that just thought they could never show up and just watch VCSA. And so the policy was done to stop that. And so,
Well, wasn't there also an issue, Dr. Constant, of faculty, some faculty were approving it themselves.
and the faculty,
That was my understanding.
But, and so
Yeah.
that's the thing, that students are only allowed to miss 2. I think it's easier to monitor if it's an 8-week class than like Dr. Johnson's example of a 16-week class where it's this
Absolutely.
one-off. But yeah, so it can't, it's the professors no longer have the autonomy after 2 to make that decision. And if a student
Well,
misses
and that
their
would be
3rd class, you would send them, say, no, you may not turn in a VCSA. You must speak to your PC. That's
that
the
would be
policy.
a really cool thing to be able to capture in the LMS, right? It's like, okay, it's going to flag how many times. I don't know if you all are having those conversations in your colleges, but I've heard that there's some conversations going around in terms of like, when we get the new gap or whatever it may be, what kind of features would we like? And I think a tally of absences, especially if they're going to uphold a rule like this, would be very helpful. Thank you. That is really helpful, because it's important that we think about our different teaching modalities. One of the things that came out of the article, going back to the article, was kind of these 3 realms of engagement. And this was kind of, I mean, again, just like Dr. Johnson said at the beginning of the hour, they had a small sampling, they had a specific sampling. When I went back and looked at the numbers, about half were living on campus, and half had a really short commute or were living in the community already. So, again, you had a really kind of focused demographic. So their needs may have been a little bit different, but I'm just going to give a shout out to James Jones for this visual here he created, and just kind of thinking about the different areas of engagement. And we added some questions here to kind of reflect on your own teaching practices. So we had in the article participation engagement, skill engagement, and then there was something called effective emotional engagement, which I thought was interesting, given that just like Dr. Johnson had pointed out earlier, some students were really kind of looked at assignments and quizzes as like a major factor for engagement, and some were strictly focused on that kind of social engagement. But what I liked about these three realms is, if you'll notice, they fit very well with a lot of what we do and what we pursue at Westcliff as far as active learning, skill development and application, if you think of the Capri model, and then of course supporting our students. So going back, I mean, please forgive the very crowded slides, but in terms of participation engagement, how do you think about, what your students are physically doing in class? We've got some really great examples. Dr. Papadopoulos said, I like to walk around and see what they're actually doing on their laptops. I love that. She posted that in the chat earlier. Professor Brody said, I walk around and kind of, watch for the phones to go down, or the app, the getting back to what they need to be doing, and then what challenges have you faced, and like what are the solutions, or how did you resolve them? Sound like we've had some really good solutions so far. In terms of skill development, how are your students practicing the skills from your class? And again, for those of you who are new faculty, one of the challenges that I hear often from faculty is Dr. Papadopoulos alluded to it earlier, the syllabus is set. The coursework is set. So the content is set. It's really how you're bringing that content to life. So you might have some activities that are already, required in the syllabus. But last question there on the bottom, what have you tried to boost skill engagement? And then what was the result? Maybe is a good place to start in thinking about our Westcliff population and kind of our processes here. And finally, effective emotional engagement. Few reflection questions there. Do you notice patterns of emotional engagement in your classes? Kind of what Dr. Johnson was talking about earlier. Why is Monday different from Thursday? Or why is this group different from that group? Is there that student who's talking all the time? Do you have an easier time in some classes creating collaborative environments if you're doing group work than you do in other spaces? Do students feel comfortable to succeed? This was talked a lot about in the article, about terms of students having that connection to the teacher, to the content, that emotional connection that, obviously hasn't always been at the top of our list when it comes to university teaching. And we're seeing more and more just how important it is. And then what strategies have you tried to positively impact the classroom environment? What was the result? So lots of questions. Does anybody want to share some thoughts? These are pulled straight out of the article, or the model there was pulled straight out of the article.
In one of my classes, which is basically hands-on classes, and they have to do what I'm doing in the class. And so I also ask them, okay, share your screen, show me what you're doing, how far. So a lot of them share your screen, why you are 6 steps back, and why you're not following us. Oh, I was stuck. Raise your hand, let me know when this is your last chance. Otherwise, you're not gonna be learning what we're supposed to know. And then hey, share your screen in short notice. It did work for me.
That's really good. How do you prepare them to know that they're gonna share their screen?
From the very beginning, I tell them, expect me to ask you to share your screen every minute. And this is where you're supposed to do what I'm doing. You have to follow what I'm doing. You're not just watching, you're doing it. So I provide them the data set, they load it. And here, the website you go, or here you open your Excel or open whatever you have, and you are expected to share your screen any minute.
I like that. I like the aspect of students sharing their screen. Again, this is something that I've been told is really controversial. Don't force students to share their screen. But especially if you're working on a process, it isn't like you're asking them to share everything. They can select, but that's a skill set. I always go back to a couple of really close friends who work in recruiting, and individuals who can use Zoom, post-COVID is so important, and they get kind of oh, you don't know how to do any, and not just Zoom. There's what's the other one? The Google one. We don't use it here at Westcliff, but if you have meetings and things like that, Google Meet, is it called Google Meet?
Google Meet.
Is that it?
Yeah, Google Meet.
Okay. And so, knowing how to do that in itself is a skill, right? So it's also really effective check-in, but it's also a skill. Dr. Kaufman said, I teach from the back of the class and expect that I will invite them to lead from the front back to the class and to me in the back. From the front. Do you want to unmute and share a little bit more around that?
Yeah, sorry, I'm in an area where there's some noise, so I apologize.
Oh, no, it's okay.
When I've taught, because I've dealt with a lot of different types of adults and professionals, what I try to do is I think of myself as being a participant. What does this class look like from the back of the class? Now, to some of the professors who've already spoken, yeah, I want to see their screens. Absolutely. That's part of the reason why I'm back there. But I also want to see how it is that this information that I either put on the whiteboard or on the screen, how is it being seen and how are people interacting with it? Whether I'm going to break them up into groups or whether I want to see how they're working. And then I want to let them know in advance that they're going to get up in front of the class. They're going to interact and present and be able to respond to core pieces of the content or whatever the lesson is, right? So the expectation is that I'm a facilitator, right? Within that, whether you call it a flipped classroom or not, but they're going to learn to lead in some examples of which they're going to be alerted in advance that this is the expectation of what they need to do, right? I'm not just a talking head in front, right? And I want, and so I set that expectation very early on and then move back and say, okay, right? Who wants to lead this next part? Or call on the person to say, all right, for this section now, present what you think is going on here. And let's have a discussion with that, with you leading it, right? Because that's what they need to do. That's what they're going to do when they leave, my classroom and they do the jobs that I've done. They're going to have to stand and deliver. So.
Absolutely. Thank you. That definitely describes it better than how I was reading it. Thank you so much, Dr. Kaufman. Professor Artui said, to enhance student skill set and reinforce learning, I ask students to set goals for future assignments based on the feedback I provide on the feedback section on GAP. Yeah, goal setting, get some skin in the game. Do you want to unmute and elaborate on that a bit? How has that looked for you? How do they feel? How do your students feel setting goals? I've had mixed results with that. Not gonna lie.
Good morning, everyone. I'm not feeling well, so I'll try
sorry.
to make sense as I explain this point. So I noticed that, for example, many students are still facing some challenges with their academic writing. So I provide detailed feedback on the, because I teach at the College of Education, and mastering academic writing is one of the core skills we try to enhance. So I asked them to read my feedback because, sometimes it takes 20 minutes to grade one paper. So I want to make sure students are actually reading my feedback. So I asked them to read the feedback and set a goal based on this feedback on how they, one thing they would like to improve when they work on their future assignments. For example, students would say, I want to include, I will make sure I include at least 3 in-text citations. Or students might say, I will make sure my paper includes clear headings. So they need to set specific goals and not general goals, such as I want to improve my academic writing skills, because that's not it's not feasible to achieve that within 2 or 3 weeks. So we want to make sure these goals are specific. Thank you, Dr. Constant. Yeah, I hope I made sense as I
love that. No, that's great. I'm glad you added that context. That is so, and not just the aspect. I love the aspect of goal setting from your feedback, because that's going to help them make more specific goals, but then making it attainable, making it reachable, right? Like we have, what is it? Oh my gosh, SMART goals. I'm still under the weather myself, so I completely empathize with you. It's definitely framing it that way. I think students will feel a little bit more connected to the course. Yeah, and accountable. Absolutely. Absolutely. Any other thoughts? A lot of questions. Remember, you can download these slides and reflect on them for yourself. A couple more questions, kind of. I was trying to think of questions that were specific a little bit more to our Westcliff population. So how do you support students' effective engagement, especially in asynchronous or hybrid courses where students may feel isolated? I think we've heard a little bit of that. But if you have some more thoughts, please do let me know. And then also the study also talked a little bit about students whose first language is not English, reporting lower engagement levels. I don't think there was any real shocking news there. What approaches do you use to address language barriers and ensure inclusive engagement across different modalities that you teach in? And I know everybody here is teaching at different levels, different modalities. Did we lose Dr. Brody?
Well, there's also, I mean, it'd be interesting to know. I don't think they gave enough details on the participation part. It's not just language, the different cultural aspects that go along with that.
Absolutely.
You know, there's so, I mean, that's, I think even more so than the language part of it, especially at the college level. You know, they're college students, so you would expect some sort of some degree of that. But I mean, if you're from, for instance, in India, Bangladesh, they're used to just lectures. They're not into that. It's the same thing with China. They're a very by rote education where teacher speaks, you listen. In other countries, the engagement is very different. So again, sample size, too many. This multivariate analysis is not nearly big enough to encompass enough to make specific. That's why they came up with the conclusion of, we're not sure.
They really blew up that whole asynchronous. Oh, we had these amazing numbers from our asynchronous courses. And then I was like, why is that? I kept trying to look back going, wait, why is that? Because
you saw 7 categories that people said were great, and others the same categories, they suck.
These are terrible.
So,
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So like, okay, we can't win for losing on this.
Right.
Actually, a human like tend to do the minimum to get by, like especially like if there is no incentive. So if I can sit in the class not participating and get like what I want grade wise, why should I be like involved? Why should put extra effort?
Yeah.
So you have to push for that. I say like, you know, maybe if I sit down and just pretend that I'm listening, I will get the same grade as somebody who's so if the success defined by how much grade, not by how much knowledge, this is how they go, right? So we need to change this understanding that success is not by getting a good grade. Success is how much you learn from this class, and then you have to participate more. This is usually the approach and say like, if you don't want to learn, just tell me, I will not bother you for the rest of the class. I will give you passing grade. But if you want to learn, you have to adhere to how I'm gonna push you, and just excuse me for being aggressive, but this is what you have asked for.
We have a lot of students who would like that option. I don't really want to do that much. Can I just, can I hang back and get the C? No. If you have any other thoughts, please do chime in. We're coming up on time here, so I want to make sure that I talk a little bit about the apps that we shared. Professor Dr. Papadopoulos mentioned Mentimeter earlier. There's some links there. You can find them in the ad for this event. Also, please do remember that your Westcliff University email address is a Google email address. So you can always click on that little link that says log in with Google and then select your Westcliff one. Let's see here. I actually had an example of it, but I don't know if it's going to load. You all know I'm having technology issues. So Eduaide.ai. So first of all, Mentimeter is one that we've had some really great positive feedback from faculty on. So do check it out in terms of polling and several of the other word clouds and things that are in there. We were looking to get that as an institution, just because it would allow for more users and we could have more, kind of feedback from the developer on how to use it for like active engagement, because it's one of the few apps that really works with just about every single one of our modalities. So that's always nice. But Eduaide.ai, a lot of times we get a lot of questions in the Light Center about, okay, AI, what are we doing with the AI? And this is one that, if you go get started for free, continue with Google, please ignore all of my Google accounts. I've got quite a few.
Quite a bit,
this is
quite
really
a few pseudo ones in there I saw. There's a lot of yeah. These are alternative identities, huh?
Lots going on. Lots going on with my Gmails. So what we like about, like, there's a lot of features to kind of go into, but don't worry about unit plans. There's some really great, so you can choose your subject area. So even if I think if you've been to some of my other events with me, let's use career and technical. Now here's the argument, right? Oh, there's not enough out there for, college level. And it's true. Most of your AI tools that are for education, they're heavy focus on K through 12. I won't say that this one is amazingly different. I still haven't found the tool. Stanford claims to be developing one, but I still have not found the tool that is really, really like we could really absolutely without a doubt say it's for higher ed. But I do love that they have all these different options and you can type in a topic. Let's see. So, what were we talking about earlier? Goal setting. And we can ask for engagement activities, goal setting. And then even if you click on enhance and just say, can you just enhance my search here? Students will demonstrate the ability to set, evaluate, and adjust personal and academic goals by employing effective strategies. I wasn't going to come up with all of that in 5 seconds, so I appreciate that feature. And then you can kind of do, oh, my toolbar's in the way. Let's move that. Oh, this is when I need Dr. Broding here. She's much more well-versed on this app than I am. Let's see what happens when I click on add workspace. Ah, there we go. So then it kind of creates activities that you can do. If you're feeling stuck to come up with activities, you could specify. Obviously, as with all AI tools, go through it, ask how well it actually serves the purpose, challenge it. I don't like this, come up with something better. I do that with ChatGPT all the time. Feel free to challenge it, but it's an interesting tool. And I think hopefully, if you want to try it out, you can get some use out of it. Okay, I just want to show that one real quick, just because it's one that we haven't really talked about in this session before. We have, however, talked about Menti quite a few times. And so, again, there's lots of information in Acorn on the different teaching modalities, on some of our tools. You can always reach out to me. 2 of the classes I just posted in there, those are 2, one self-paced course and one webinar that actually James did host with Eve. It was, I believe it's one of our quick 30-minute ones this year on working with different teaching modalities. So if you're finding yourself a little stuck, or you're coming in, my new faculty that's in the room, you're coming in and you've got your first class and you realize it's one with an ASA because they needed you to be at 2 different campuses at 2 different times, however that looks, you have options there for support. So always reach out to us and we'll definitely support you. And again, we are currently doing our planning for 2025. So we need to know your thoughts on Reading Club. We need to know your thoughts on any activity. Please feel free to share as much feedback as you can. We will be doing a department survey for all faculty that's going to be coming out, I believe, next week. I'm not quite sure on the timing of that, but please do look out for that. But as far as Reading Club goes, if this is your first one, if this is your 5th one, please do complete that survey and let us know how we're doing. Any other thoughts? Ideas, questions? Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for coming. I always appreciate those of you who attend. Also, this Reading Club was offered this year a few times at 11 a.m. and a few times at 5 p.m. Let us know what you prefer, because we're probably just going to be doing it one time slot next year. All right. Take care, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.